Committee, August 5th, 2013. The notice requirements provided for in the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied. Notice that this meeting was properly given by transmission to the Asbury Park Press, the Star Ledger, the Independent, and the Trooper Times by posting at the Middletown Township Municipal Building and filing with the Township Clerk on January 11, 2013. Committeeman Fiore.
Here.
Committeeman Michelle.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Murray. Here. Committeeman Sedembrino.
Here.
Mayor Sharpler.
Here.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence to honor the troops serving worldwide, defending our freedoms, constitutions, and way of life. Thank you. Our first item on tonight's agenda, we have an introduction of ordinance 2013-3094, an ordinance authorizing third-party payroll disbursement services. Committeeman Fiore.
Yes.
Committeeman Michelle.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Sedembrino.
Yes.
Mayor Sharpler.
Yes.
Motion carries to pass this ordinance on first reading with a public hearing to be held August 15, 2013. 19. Thank you. Our next item on tonight's agenda, we have 13-205, resolution authorizing payment of bills for August 6, 2013.
Adoption?
Second.
Committeeman Fiore.
Yes.
Committeeman Michelle.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Sedembrino.
Yes.
Mayor Sharpler.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt resolution 13-205. At this time, I'd like to ask the Township Committee to adopt a consent agenda, which would include resolutions 13-206 through 13-211, including approval of volunteer fire credit applications.
Adoption?
Committeeman Fiore.
Yes.
Committeeman Michelle.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Murray.
Yes.
Committeeman Sedembrino.
Yes.
Mayor Sharpler.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt a consent agenda. For the August 19th meeting, we'll have a certificate of appreciation and proclamations, beginning with the Employee of the Month for June 2013. Presentation from the Fort Monmouth Fire Company to the Middletown Disaster Relief Fund for Oklahoma. Proclamation declaring September 2013 as Paint the Town Teal Month for ovarian cancer awareness. And proclamation acknowledging the Middletown 350 celebration. Presentation of certificate of appreciation to the Middletown 350 logo designer. And a proclamation declaring September 28th, 2013 as Middletown Day 2013. Approval of minutes will be from May 20th, 2013 regular meeting, the June 3rd, 2013 executive and workshop meeting, the June 17th, 2013 executive and regular meeting, and the July 8th special meeting. For discussion for tonight, we have the cancellation of community development mortgage, the sign ordinance.
Can I ask a few questions about that?
Sign ordinance.
Yeah, but Jason is here to talk about that.
So just as a point of clarification from the memo, and I appreciate Jason, I appreciate you and everyone else coming together to look at this further, and I'm just a little confused, but I see a reference to section 16-6-635.G, prohibited signs. Is that from our ordinance, or is that from an ordinance and language that you've taken from somewhere else?
That's on our ordinance right now, with the intention being to prohibit signs that are a distraction or a safety issue.
So the issue I have, amongst all other issues, is that how did these things get put in if we have an ordinance right now that prohibits moving, revolving, blinking, flashing, vibrating, flickering, tracer, or sequential lighting? Because I can name 6 off the top of my head that currently do that various around the town. So how did we get here?
The only thing that I could suggest about that is we looked at some of the permits that have been issued, and there were restrictions on the flickering, the changing, so that if there was a violation of this component of the ordinance, there would be an enforcement tool. I think the concern had been that just by virtue of being an LED type sign, it didn't automatically have those types of features, because you could have a static display with LEDs, so that if we found that there was going to be too much change, too much flickering, we'd have an enforcement tool.
At the discretion of not embarrassing any of those signs, I mean, every single one that I've tailored my comments to over the last few months, including those on schools, including ours at the Art Center, mind you, so to speak. Flash, flicker, scroll, sweep, use colors. I mean, it's so what's the mechanism? Code enforcement at this point, now that the cat's out of the bag, or tighten an ordinance that we're not going to apply?
You gotta separate the ones on school properties, because they're not subject to this.
Understood.
Public land is different, not subject to our zoning regulations.
We have them on churches, we have them on businesses, we have them on facilities.
Churches?
You have to get a permit to put in signs. So, I mean, if they're,
Schools also being, not non-public schools also are,
non-public schools are not exempt, no.
okay, so,
I think the issue is, coming up with standards that work and that make sense for, I mean, let's face it, when this language was written, there were no, these LED signs didn't exist. This ordinance is, many years old. So they weren't meant for those signs, they were meant for signs that had blinking bulbs, neon possibly, glittery types of shimmering type signs. They were meant for those sorts of things. And so the issue now is to come up with a standard for LED signs that the existing ones have to live by, and any future ones would have to comply with before they can be put in.
my argument is you already have this in the ordinance, and I was not aware of that. That's my fault, the first time.
Well, it
Point two.
was never intended to apply to LED signs.
So this was just signs in general. So if you had an LED sign that,
It was just static.
none of them are static, is my
No,
point.
no,
So is
that's
it a code enforcement issue? If we go and change this ordinance, how do we enforce? How do
Well,
we enforce what's already out there?
the issue would be, if you adopted a standard that said that signs could only change, every 10 seconds, or there could be no more than two colors, whatever ultimately we decide the
That's
standards are.
part two of this amendment.
Yeah. Then the existing signs, it becomes a bit of an issue as to whether or not they would say, well, we're pre-existing non-conforming, so we can do what we
But they
want.
already don't meet our current ordinance, is my point.
Right, so the code enforcement could make them comply with the new ordinance. I mean,
I still am
You're
not following
saying-
how the
you're
new
saying
ordinance
that- you're
means
saying that.
anything when it's currently in the ordinance from what Jason's telling me,
because.
and it's already doing
I
that.
think you'd have an argument, because they're gonna say, well, you gave me a zoning permit to put one in, you can't make me take it out now.
Therein lies my issue that I'm asking you, how did this happen?
Like, zoning apparently interpreted that the LED signs weren't what was intended to be covered by this prohibition, and so they permitted them. And I think probably part of the issue that was, and I'm surmising now, but part of the issue was that when people would apply for these things, they go, well, they're on the school, and so you must allow them. And it can't be unsafe, because the idea of these regulations is to keep signs that are going to be a safety issue, a distraction for drivers. And so if they're a distraction to a driver is the same on a school property as it's anywhere else.
Yeah, my concern is, we as a committee can make some additional modifications to this ordinance, which I would be all in favor of. I think I've been on the record several times about that. Jason has some standards that we can follow to do that. My concern is, we can make those modifications, but we already, A, how is that going to be enforced? And B, we currently now, from what I'm being told, have a pretty clear definition of what is and isn't allowed on an LED sign or on any sign right now, which is currently being done. I mean, so no modification, if we make no modification right now, I can argue that 8 signs I could bring you to tomorrow violate our ordinance. that already stands. So now I'm not even sure, should we make further modifications if we already have something in place that we're just not effectively monitoring, and that's disappointing.
Well, I think you need new standards, because
Definitely.
LED signs are a different animal.
You have the
completely.
gas stations now that put. all
Every gas
LED,
station's got their
every-
prices on an LED
Correct.
Plus,
sign.
you know, I think the trigger here is for the zoning officer, if the committee enacts additional or new standards, then they're going to be required to take another look at that to make certain that they're matching the new standards that were put in place. And this way, there's no question.
And you could go, I mean, a review could be done by code enforcement to see, get it, take an inventory of these signs, see which ones permits may have been granted to, or may not have all gotten permits, who knows, that has to be examined. And then determinations can be made by the code enforcement officer whether they're in violation of the current ordinance, but at the same time, I think you need to definitely address these standards as something a number of municipalities have been doing in recent years to address the proliferation of LED signs in particular, and there's multiple ordinances out there that we were able to pull from different places that have been updating to address the permitted illuminations at different times of day or night. Obviously, if you have an LED sign, which is, during the daylight hours would be brighter than it at the nighttime hours, and they adjust the brightness depending upon the, whether it's dark or light out, and the frequency at which they change, if at all, and things of that nature. But obviously, a gas station that has LED lit signs is going to change whenever the price changes. It's not going to be scrolling or flashing or blinking or anything, presumably, but certainly the ordinance would be far more defensible, with standards such as that established, and makes code enforcement's jobs easier and zoning's job easier, because they can point to it and say, look, these are the standards that you have to abide by. Xerox them and hand them out to the people that are seeking permits for.
Moving forward.
Yeah, moving forward, yeah. Because right now, the current ordinance, while it does have a ban for some of these, I think is the issue with the enforcement of it is probably in that there's really a lack of definitions to a certain extent. And also in the judgment of the Director of Public Safety is kind of a broad brush by which it would have to be presumably in the police department that says, look, this is a hazard of traffic, or that determination has to be made before this type of signage is determined to be improper. So
We're also finding that this type of signage does not always require a permit for the purposes of an electrical permit.
Right.
In particular, a window sign. They're inexpensive, they can be purchased from a catalog, hung in a window and plugged into a wall. So those can be pretty attention-getting. So we want to create some standards for window signage, because other types of signage typically requires you to come through, at the very least, the building department with an electrical permit. That does.
Yeah, the signs in windows are another issue that are not really regulated very strictly. Store puts up a sign in the window that says they're having a certain item for sale for this week.
It's not a
And
permanent sign.
it's not permanent, but in some cases now they're using electronic, fairly bright, multicolored electronic signs. Now, they're not near the road for the most part, they're not likely to be a distraction to drivers, but are they gonna get your attention? Yeah.
But I'd also bet you that if you add that to the permanent signage on the building, it exceeds the ordinance max for square footage.
It probably does, but it's a tough one, because you start regulating the signs that people put in and out of their store windows, and they're gonna say, you're really going after my business, it's a major economic issue, and it'll be
I'm okay.
hornet's nest.
Right. I'm okay to that point with Jason's recommendation on location, the B zones, the different zones you can have, different standards of things of that nature. I think that's a very good, economic thing to put in that. You don't want to do exactly that. You don't want to hamstring business, But, there has to be limits to the eliminations and things of that nature. So I would, look, there's not a ton of them out there right now, but there's more and more coming, so it's not like the cat's out of a 45 square mile bag. It's not like everybody has one on every corner, but 5 years from now, everybody could have one on every corner because they're becoming more prevalent. So I'd like to see some of these measures put into the ordinance that Jason outlines. The only one that I have some issue with is duration and the 8-second duration. Call me someone that doesn't want Middletown to, start looking like Atlantic City or Las Vegas, but I think an 8-second message is a little bit, I still think that defeats the purpose of, distraction, even if it's up for 8 seconds. I mean, you're still getting almost 10 messages and 8 messages in a minute. That's a lot of messages, in my opinion. So I would like to see the duration, if possible. If it's illegal to do it, then we keep the 8-second standard. But I would like to see the duration of what can be changed a little bit more concerning.
I know that's a standard that's typically used in the billboard industry, for example. If you have the large changeable
Right,
billboards.
like on the turnpike.
You could, I wouldn't suggest pulling over on the turnpike and counting 8 seconds, but if you're in a traffic jam and you wanted to count 8 seconds, that's the duration pretty much for every
Right.
sign. Could we apply that type of standard for an electronic sign at a place of worship, at a business? Possibly, maybe we would consider prolonging it a little bit beyond that standard. That would be fine as well.
Just from a distraction purpose, but I think illumination is the real key. Being able to tone it down, being able to not have scrolls and other distractions. I mean, I just think it's going to become a lot more prevalent. So that's my viewpoint.
I agree. I mean, we're at a point where people are texting on the phone. They don't need another distraction that's looking out the window. So if we can reel on it, I don't know if I would agree.
Yeah, you gotta strike the balance, as Tony said, because all of a sudden, you'll have businesses going into areas where they allow them a little bit more flexibility to, promote their business. I've actually got more complaints about those ones that look like almost sailboats, sails, fluttering ones, because I guess you can move them, and if you get them in the line of sight at a stop sign or something like that, that's a real impediment.
Here, the way we handle those is they have to get a special event permit, and they can only have them for a certain amount of time. And they can only have so many special events per year, and so they keep track of those. Now, does everyone ask for a special event permit? No, not the inflatable ones. Those we really try to not to have those.
Because I do some that are there every day.
Yeah, those are a problem.
That person that puts in there.
Yeah, I mean, they're a problem. We've had people, businesses that have put, the giant air balloons on the roofs, things like that. And the problem with those is it has happened, they break loose. You got a windy day, and all of a sudden they blow out to the road and become a real hazard. So we really don't permit those, especially the really big ones. But the flags and all that, they have to get a special event permit in order to put them up. But again, realistically, not everyone asks. They just sometimes just put them up, and and hopefully they get caught, but they don't always.
Okay, our next item is the fee ordinance for non-residential recreation fees.
We're going to be bringing back, if you remember, we did a fee ordinance a month or two ago regarding non-residential use of park facilities. We're going to amend that further. What we've kind of talked about doing is adopting a fee schedule that's very, very similar and tailored almost towards the way the Board of Education established their fee schedule for all parks by establishing classes of uses. Since so many of our parks are also school properties that we issue permits for, we thought it would be better to structure our fee schedule so that it was very much like theirs. Our fees are lower than theirs, but the way we establish fees and the groups that are subject to the different levels of fees, we figured we'd line that up with the same way the Board of Ed does it, as far as nonprofits and leagues and out-of-town users and things like that. So we'll have a revised version of that ordinance at the next meeting to introduce.
The next item is the 2014 DOT municipal aid applications.
Okay, each year the township applies to the state DOT for funding for road construction through the municipal aid program. The last 2 years, 2012 and 2013, Murphy Road was the road that was applied for. Funding is usually granted to roads that service a lot of traffic near schools or near the state highways. In discussions with Mr. Keaty last week, we've looked at this year's application, which will soon be due in at the state, and looked at Main Street in Port Monmouth from Murphy Road down to Highway 36. Most likely, this year's application would cover a portion of this, not the entire length that's shown on the map in front of you. Hopefully, depending on the construction costs, might get us maybe half of this road as for funding for this year, 2014. So we wanted to get the committee's approval and go ahead and file this application.
So this red line,
This
that's
is-
what we're applying for.
Right, this is the area of Main Street that we would apply to the state for funding, right? For road construction for,
Typically get funded over 2 years.
Yeah.
Do that.
Do you typically just do one property or one corridor? Or do you do multiples and multiple?
usually it's in segments and phases through
Try to
over
continue
multiple
prior
years.
work.
Like Kings Highway East?
Yeah, we did
Right.
Kings Highway East all the way out. And we're finished with that.
It's more favorable that you're gonna receive approval on the funding if you keep the previously approved course. So,
What's the funding percentage?
it's a fee, what is it, $200,000 usually?
The last few years, the townships received $200,000 on
Per project.
in grants per project. So we try and.
So there's a max number.
There is, and that varies year to year. It's not written in stone, but that's been the recent funding. Years ago, it was usually around 150, but it's increased, but they've had less grant awards. So in past years, we're awarding grants, more than one grant to a municipality. They don't do that anymore, just one per municipality of those that are successful. So we try and balance the need versus an anticipated grant amount as best as we can. So this, like Ms. Mercantante said, all of Main Street wouldn't be one application, it's probably 2 years
So
worth.
let me ask it a different way. Are we trying to match the value of the need with the value of the projected grant receipt?
Right.
And this road is in need of repair in this section especially.
And it obviously it ends at Murphy Road, which we will finish this year.
Years ago, I mean, I was in a town that was much smaller, way fewer roads than this, and we used to get 250, 400,000 sometimes. You know what I'm talking about? That means like within the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the max was 150, but that was the standard, I'd say. The average was 150.
They might have received 2 grants for 150.
And-
no?
No, there was, I remember specifically, even in Hoboken, they got grants for 250, and
They get a lot of things in places like that.
I got
Who runs Middlesex County? It was in
Hoboken
Trenton.
doesn't get much, believe me. They don't really go out, they don't, I would tell you, they don't get a whole lot of time.
I gotta imagine.
But in Highland Park, for example, that's not a city environment or anything, that's a suburb, and they would get between 250 and 400 times.
I can tell you when I spoke about 150 and 200, I was talking specifically Middletown over the last 10, 12 years.
Really?
And I'd say the last 2 to 3 years, it was in the $200,000 range, and 150 for many years before that.
150 was in the past, in other towns I worked for, 150 was the standard for years.
And there were years where there were no grant awards.
We have the 2012 road resurfacing west change order, and the 2012 road resurfacing east change order. And then we have township committee comments.
So, you should comment on
I know, I know.
Just, maybe no comments unless we're already. It's good to see the work being done over there on the Mud Swamp field facility. Things seem to be moving in a very positive and quick manner, expeditious manner. Mr. Keaty and I were out there this morning, so hopefully the weather will continue to cooperate, and the children will be able to utilize that field to have an early start of school. So, with that, no other comments tonight.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor. Nothing. Can't let this gang go down a few things. It's summer doldrums, I guess, so there's not a lot going on, but one of the things I did go to was the Veterans of Foreign War, Korean War Veterans breakfast at the DPW Hall. And it was great. You kind of forget the Korean War vets are now getting to be their mid-80s, and they're passing each successive year. So it was a great turnout. Good to see a lot of those folks. Another thing, one of my friends from Ideal Beach said I didn't mention this, and I'm sure I did, but they had their annual event, family neighborhood gathering, and it was great. And as in years past, I had to go judge a spare eating contest, so I had to face myself both places. But it was really a great turnout, a picture-perfect day, and good to see so many people from that neighborhood who are doing magnificent things up there, and they really should be commended for everything they do for that neighborhood. Where's Mike down? The concert series at the Art Center continued, and Glenn Burtnick, who those of you who are a rock geek like I am, was the bass player for the band Styx, brought a Beatles tribute band that he's a part of to the Art Center. And I know Mr. Mercantante and Mr. Van Ness, he's here, were both there. And it was one of the best shows I've ever seen anywhere, but especially at the Art Center. And the place was packed. Unfortunately, the weather was a little bit threatening, so they had to bring it inside, but didn't deter anyone, and it was just a fantastic night all around. And in fact, Glenn Burton came up to me afterwards and said, "Gee, we really liked the Art Center. Do you think you'd have us back?" And I was, absolutely. Out next week. And it was really great. Everybody had a great time, and it was really good to see so many people from the township here enjoying a concert at that great facility. And as Mr. Fiore said, I'm going to finish up with this, the soccer fields, I think, are a little bit ahead of schedule, and I think the weather has helped us out a lot. And if we keep going at this pace, I think we're going to be right on schedule, and the soccer league's going to have, and the schools are certainly going to have fields that they're going to be very proud of. We should all be very proud of. And with that, let's open it up.
We have public comments.
Same ground rules as always. Please, your name and address, and remember to keep your comments to 5 minutes. And if you want to go beyond 5 minutes, we'll be glad to stay around and continue talking. Okay? All right. Yes, sir.
Hi, this is Ron Askew. I live at 914 Nut Swamp Road. And a little bit of education for me, but just curious about the Nut Swamp soccer field. And I think it's a great idea to have it, but I was always curious that when a resident needs to do something in their home, they need to go through a very extensive permit process. And discussions with the town and the building and everybody else, was that kind of discussion took place regarding the soccer fields? And maybe a lot of us in the area missed it?
In as much as them having to get a permit?
Or permit, just some discussion in the town that
They
there's
were
an intention of doing.
Yeah.
widely discussed.
It was?
Yeah, we've discussed it at multiple meetings. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of
It was in the
articles
newspaper,
Then I
multiple
just
newspapers.
dismissed it all, that's all. Okay.
You
Thank
gotta
you.
sign up for our alerts and the website. We have the #1 website.
I do have
in
it.
Jersey.
I
Okay.
did sign up for that.
Yeah, so
And I must have missed it all.
go in, the content's always changing, and it's really very informative.
Will do.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Ron. Thank you. Anybody else care to speak? See, no?
Wait,
There you go.
Linda Bell, 19 Make Court. I just one quick comment regarding resolution number 13-211, which appoints a member to the Sewage Authority Board, and it says Andrew Zapsik. I'm just wondering, is that Andrew Zapsik senior or junior?
Yeah, I think it's senior. I think his son's name is Andrew Jr., so I guess he would be senior.
Senior?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The attorney wants to vote.
Yeah. No, not yet, anyway. Only one's in the- Anybody else care to speak? Seeing no members of the public, no further members of the public come forward, we will close the public portion and move for adoption. Adjourned.
Committeeman Fiore.
Yeah.
Committeeman Massell.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Burney. Yes. Committeeman Sedambrino. Mayor Sharpenberger.
Yes.
Motion carries for adjournment.
Can you send me a copy from there? Because I think the